I stepped back, admiring the vibrant array of flowers I'd just planted. The secret garden, tucked away in a corner of Brad's family estate, was finally coming to life. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, casting a warm glow on the freshly turned soil. "Amy, where are you?" Brad's voice echoed across the grounds. I wiped my hands on my jeans and called back, "Over here, honey, in the garden." Brad appeared around the corner, his face breaking into a wide smile as he took in the scene. "Wow, you've been busy. It looks amazing." "Thanks," I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "I think your mother will love it." Brad's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "I'm sure she will. Listen, I need to talk to you about something." I felt a flutter of nervousness in my stomach. "Is everything okay?" He ran a hand through his hair, a telltale sign he was stressed. "I just got a call from the office. They need me to fly out to Shanghai tomorrow for an important meeting." "Tomorrow," I echoed, my heart sinking. "But what about?" I know," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm sorry, Amy. I tried to get out of it, but this deal could make or break the company." I pulled back, searching his face. "How long will you be gone?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. He hesitated, then added, "I was thinking, maybe you could stay here with my mother while I'm away?" I froze. Emily and I had never quite clicked, despite my best efforts. The thought of spending weeks alone with her made my stomach churn. "I don't know, Brad. Maybe I could just stay at our place?" "Please, Amy," he pleaded. "Mom's been lonely since Dad passed, and I'd feel better knowing you're not alone, especially with the baby on the way." At the mention of the baby, my hand instinctively went to my still flat stomach. We'd only found out a week ago, and the news still felt surreal. "All right," I conceded. "I'll stay." Brad's face lit up. "Thank you, sweetheart. I promise it'll be fine. Mom will be thrilled to have you here." As if on cue, Emily's voice rang out from the house. "Bradley? Are you out there?" "Speaking of Mom," Brad muttered. "We're in the garden, Mother," he called back. Emily appeared moments later, immaculately dressed as always. Her eyes swept over the garden, then landed on me, still covered in dirt. "Oh, Amy, dear, you look a fright. Why don't you go clean up? I need to speak with Bradley about his trip." I opened my mouth to protest, but Brad squeezed my hand. "Go on, honey. I'll fill Mom in on everything." Reluctantly, I headed towards the house. As I reached the door, I glanced back. Emily was gesturing animatedly, her voice low but intense. Brad's shoulders were hunched, his head bowed. A chill ran down my spine. Something told me the next few weeks were going to be far from fine. Inside, I washed my hands and splashed water on my face, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. When I looked up, Emily was standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "So," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "it seems we'll be roommates for a while." I forced a smile. "Looks that way." Emily's eyes narrowed. "I do hope you'll be able to keep up with the house while you're here. It's quite a bit larger than that little apartment you and Bradley insist on living in." "I'm sure I'll manage," I replied, gritting my teeth. "Oh, and Amy," Emily added as she turned to leave, "do try to dress more appropriately while you're here. We wouldn't want the neighbors to think we've hired new help." With that, she swept out of the room, leaving me stunned and fighting back tears. As I heard Brad's car start up outside, panic gripped me. What had I gotten myself into? The first week without Brad was even worse than I'd imagined. Emily's true colors emerged like a poisonous bloom, her words dripping with venom at every turn. I was in the kitchen, battling morning sickness while trying to prepare lunch, when Emily sauntered in. "Oh, Amy dear, you're not using the good china, are you? I'm not sure your delicate touch is quite up to handling such precious heirlooms." I gripped the counter, willing my stomach to settle. "I thought we could use them since your bridge club is coming over." Emily's laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. "Darling, my friends are used to a certain standard. Perhaps it's best if you let me handle the entertaining. Why don't you go tend to that little patch of weeds you call a garden?" I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was temporary. "Of course, Emily. Whatever you think is best." As I headed outside, I heard her mutter, "At least out there she can't embarrass us all." The garden became my sanctuary, the only place I could escape Emily's constant criticism. But even there, I wasn't safe for long. One afternoon, as I was pruning the roses, Emily's shrill voice cut through the air. "Amy, come here this instant." I found her in the living room, face flushed with anger, holding a framed photo. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. My heart sank as I recognized the picture, Brad and me on our wedding day, beaming with joy. I'd placed it on the mantel that morning, hoping to add a personal touch to the cold, impersonal room. I thought it would be nice, too. "Nice?" Emily interrupted. "You thought it would be nice to plaster your common little face all over my home? This is the Hartley estate, not some trashy little apartment in the city." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I'll take it down." Emily thrust the frame into my hands. "See that you do, and while you're at it, perhaps you could make yourself useful and dust in here. The maids have been slacking lately." As I turned to leave, she added, "Oh, and Amy, do try to watch your figure. I'd hate for Bradley to come home to find he's married a whale." That night, I sobbed into my pillow, one hand resting protectively over my stomach. I desperately wanted to call Brad, to beg him to come home, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. His business deal was too important, and I didn't want to be the needy, clingy wife Emily clearly thought I was. The next morning, I woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Curious, I crept to the top of the stairs, listening. "Don't know what Bradley was thinking, marrying that girl," Emily was saying. "She's completely out of her depth here. No breeding, no class." "Now, Emily," a man's voice replied, "surely she can't be that bad. Bradley's always had good judgment." "Good judgment?" Emily scoffed. The boy was clearly thinking with something other than his brain. "Mark my words, George, she's after the Hartley fortune. Why else would a nobody like her set her sights on my son?" I stumbled back, feeling as if I'd been slapped. Is that really what Emily thought of me? What she was telling people about me? Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit me. I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it in time. As I knelt on the cold tile floor, tears streaming down my face, I made a decision. I couldn't let Emily's cruelty continue unchecked. For the sake of my baby and my own sanity, I had to fight back. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and opened the voice recorder app. From now on, I'd document every nasty comment, every veiled insult. Emily Hartley might think she held all the power, but I was done being a victim. "Let the games begin," I thought grimly. "You have no idea who you're messing with, Emily." I woke up to the sound of Emily's shrill voice echoing through the house. "Amy, where are you? These floors won't scrub themselves." Groaning, I rolled out of bed, my stomach churning with morning sickness. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night hunched over the toilet. But Emily didn't care about that. All she cared about was her precious estate. "Coming, Emily," I called weakly, fumbling for my phone. I hit record before heading downstairs. Emily stood in the foyer, arms crossed. "There you are. I hope you're not planning to laze about all day. We have guests coming this evening, and this place is a disgrace." I looked around the spotless room, confused. "I cleaned yesterday. What needs—" "Everything!" Emily snapped. "The floors need scrubbing, the silver needs polishing, and for heaven's sake, do something about that rat's nest you call hair. You're representing the Hartley family now, though God knows why Bradley chose you." I bit my lip, fighting back tears. "I'll get started right away." "See that you do," Emily said, turning on her heel. "Oh, and Amy? Be a dear and run to the market. We're out of caviar, and you know how particular my friends are." I spent the next few hours scrubbing floors, polishing silver, and battling waves of nausea. By the time I finished, I was exhausted and starving. I hadn't had a chance to eat all day. As I was heading to the kitchen, Emily intercepted me. "Where do you think you're going?" "I was just going to make a sandwich." "Nonsense," Emily cut me off. "You need to start on dinner. I've invited the Johnsons and the Petersons. I expect a 4-course meal, and none of that pedestrian fare you usually serve." My stomach growled loudly. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Really, Amy, a lady never lets her base urges show. No wonder you've already gained so much weight." I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. "I haven't eaten all day, Emily. The baby." "Oh, spare me," Emily rolled her eyes. "When I was pregnant with Bradley, I hardly gained an ounce. But then, I come from good stock. Now get to work, and do try not to ruin dinner with your morning sickness. It's so common." Hours later, I was plating the final course when the doorbell rang. Emily swept past me, pausing only to hiss, "Remember, you're the help tonight. Stay in the kitchen where you belong." I nodded mutely, too tired to argue. As I listened to Emily greeting her guests, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Brad. "Hey, sweetheart, how are things? Mom taking good care of you?" I stared at the screen, tears welling up. How could I tell him the truth, that his mother was slowly crushing my spirit, that I was afraid for our baby? Before I could respond, Emily's voice rang out. "Amy, where's that dessert?" Wiping my eyes, I grabbed the tray and headed to the dining room. As I entered, I overheard Emily speaking in a low voice. "Such a shame. Bradley could have done so much better. But what can you do when a gold digger sinks her claws in?" The tray slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor. Silence fell as all eyes turned to me. I'm so sorry," I stammered, dropping to my knees to clean up the mess. Emily's face was a mask of fake concern. "Oh, Amy dear, how clumsy of you. Perhaps you should lie down. You're looking rather unwell." As I fled the room, I heard Emily's saccharine voice. "Poor thing. She's just not cut out for this life, I'm afraid. Now who wants coffee?" Back in my room, I collapsed on the bed, sobs racking my body. I couldn't take much more of this. Something had to change. My hand drifted to my stomach, and suddenly a fierce determination washed over me. I might not be able to stand up for myself, but I would fight tooth and nail for my baby. Grabbing my phone, I hit play on the latest recording. Emily's cruel words filled the air, and I knew what I had to do. It was time to build my case. Emily Hartley was about to learn that this gold digger had teeth of her own. The day of Emily's grand luncheon arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. My morning sickness had been particularly brutal, but I knew Emily wouldn't accept that as an excuse. I'd barely finished setting the table when the doorbell chimed. "Amy," Emily's voice rang out. "Don't just stand there gawking. Answer the door." I smoothed down my dress, the nicest one I owned, though Emily had sniffed disapprovingly when she saw it, and opened the door. A group of impeccably dressed women swept past me, air-kissing Emily and exclaiming over the decor. "Ladies, you remember my son's wife, Amy," Emily said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that fact. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the scrutinizing gazes. One woman, however, looked at me with genuine warmth. She was older than the others, with kind eyes and an elegant demeanor. "Amy, dear," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Carol. It's lovely to meet you at last." Before I could respond, Emily cut in. "Amy, why don't you check on lunch? We wouldn't want anything to go wrong, would we?" I retreated to the kitchen, my cheeks burning. As I busied myself with the final preparations, I could hear snippets of conversation from the dining room. "Really, Emily, she seems like a lovely girl." "You don't know the half of it, Carol. The way she's changed Bradley." I gripped the counter, fighting back tears. Just then, the kitchen door swung open, and Carol entered. "Need a hand, dear?" she asked, her eyes taking in my distress. "Oh, no, I couldn't ask you to." "Nonsense," Carol said firmly. "I insist. Now what can I do?" As we worked side by side, Carol chatted easily about her garden, her grandchildren, anything but the tension-filled luncheon beyond the kitchen door. For the first time in weeks, I felt myself relaxing. "You know," Carol said casually, "I knew your parents years ago." I nearly dropped the platter I was holding. "You did," Carol nodded. "Lovely people. Your mother had quite the green thumb, if I recall correctly." Before I could ask more, Emily's voice cut through our conversation. "Amy, where is that salad?" Lunch was a minefield of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults, all delivered with Emily's saccharine smile. I focused on my plate, trying to keep my composure. "Amy," one of the women simpered, "Emily tells us you're expecting. How quaint." I opened my mouth to respond, but Emily jumped in. "Yes, it was quite a surprise. We're all hoping the child takes after the Hartley side, of course." The table tittered with laughter, and I felt my face flame. Suddenly, Carol's voice cut through the chatter. "I think it's wonderful," she said firmly. "The world needs more children raised with love and kindness. I'm sure Amy and Bradley will be wonderful parents." A hush fell over the table. Emily's smile became brittle. "Well, we can only hope." As the afternoon wore on, I found myself gravitating towards Carol. There was something about her, a quiet strength, a hint of sadness in her eyes that drew me in. But every time we started talking, Emily would swoop in, steering Carol away. Finally, as the guests were leaving, Carol managed to pull me aside. "Amy, dear, I want you to have my number. If you ever need anything, anything at all, please call me." I clutched the card she pressed into my hand, a lifeline in this sea of hostility. "Thank you, Carol." "Amy, Emily's sharp voice cut me off. "Stop bothering, Carol, and come say goodbye to our guests." As I watched Carol drive away, I felt a mix of hope and confusion. Why had she been so kind? And why did I sense a hint of disappointment when she looked at me? Later that night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Brad. "Great news. Closing the deal early. Be home in a week." I stared at the screen, a war of emotions raging inside me. Relief at Brad's imminent return battled with fear of what Emily might do in this final week. One thing was clear. I needed to make a decision. Would I continue to endure in silence, or would I finally stand up to Emily? With a deep breath, I reached for my phone and pulled up Carol's number. It was time to take control of my own story. I woke up feeling dizzy and nauseous, my pregnancy symptoms hitting me full force. Despite my discomfort, I dragged myself out of bed, knowing Emily wouldn't tolerate any laziness. As I made my way downstairs, I overheard Emily on the phone. "Yes, Carol, I'd love for you to stop by this afternoon. There's something I need to discuss with you." My heart raced. Carol was coming? I hadn't spoken to her since the luncheon, but her kindness had been a beacon of hope in this nightmare. Emily hung up and turned, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "Eavesdropping, Amy? How uncouth. Since you're up, make yourself useful and clean the conservatory. It's filthy." I bit back a retort and headed to the conservatory. Hours passed as I scrubbed and polished, my back aching and stomach churning. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I sank onto a chaise lounge, closing my eyes for just a moment. "Amy?" I jolted awake to find Emily looming over me, her face twisted with rage. "You lazy, good-for-nothing girl. I give you one simple task, and I find you napping like some pampered princess." "I'm sorry, Emily," I stammered, struggling to my feet. "I just felt a bit faint." "Faint?" Emily scoffed. "In my day, women didn't use pregnancy as an excuse to shirk their duties. But then, I suppose I shouldn't expect better from someone of your background." Tears stung my eyes as Emily continued her tirade. "I knew from the moment Bradley brought you home that you were nothing but a gold digger. What did you do? Get yourself pregnant to trap him? Well, let me tell you something. You little..." "Emily!" We both whirled to see Carol standing in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Emily's demeanor changed instantly. "Carol, darling, I didn't hear you come in. Amy and I were just having a little chat about her responsibilities." Carol's eyes flicked between us, settling on me with concern. "Amy, dear, you look unwell. Why don't you sit down?" Before I could move, Emily interjected. "Nonsense, she's fine. Amy, go make some tea for our guest." As I turned to leave, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I stumbled, my vision blurring. "Amy?" Carol's voice seemed far away. I felt hands catching me as I fell, then everything went black. I came to on the chaise lounge, Carol's worried face hovering above me. "There you are, dear. How are you feeling?" I'm okay," I mumbled, trying to sit up. Emily's voice cut through the fog. "Really, Amy, such dramatics. I'm sure Carol didn't come here to witness your theatrics." Carol's eyes flashed. "Actually, Emily, I think it's time we had a frank discussion about how you're treating your daughter-in-law." Emily's face paled. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Amy is simply..." "I heard you, Emily," Carol said firmly. "Every word, and I'm appalled." As the two women faced off, I felt a surge of strength. This was my chance. "Emily," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I've been documenting everything. The insults, the unreasonable demands, all of it. If you don't change your behavior, I'll have no choice but to show Brad the truth when he returns." Emily's jaw dropped. "You wouldn't dare." "I would," I replied, meeting her gaze. "This isn't just about me anymore. I have to protect my child from your toxicity." A tense silence fell. Then, to my shock, Emily burst into tears. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "Bradley is all I have left. I can't lose him." As Carol comforted the suddenly vulnerable Emily, I sat back, stunned. Was this genuine emotion or another manipulation? Looking at Carol's sympathetic face, I realized I had a decision to make. Did I use this moment of weakness to strike back at Emily, or was there a chance for reconciliation? My hand drifted to my stomach, and I knew what I had to do. For the sake of my child, I needed to break this cycle of hurt. But how? With a deep breath, I stood up. It was time to take control of this situation, once and for all. The tension in the room was palpable as Emily's sobs subsided into hiccups. Carol patted her back gently, but her eyes were fixed on me, a mixture of sympathy and determination in her gaze. "Amy," Carol said softly, There's something you need to know. I braced myself, unsure of what was coming next. Carol took a deep breath. I knew your parents, as I mentioned before, but it wasn't just a casual acquaintance. Your mother? She was my best friend. The room seemed to tilt. What? But how? Why didn't you say anything before? I wanted to, believe me, Carol replied, her eyes misting, but I made a promise years ago to your mother. She asked me to watch over you, but to let you make your own way in the world. Emily's head snapped up, her tear-stained face twisted with confusion. What are you talking about, Carol? Carol squared her shoulders. Emily, it's time for the truth to come out. Amy isn't some gold digger you can bully and demean. Her parents were respected members of this community before they passed. In fact, Amy's mother saved your husband's life once. I felt like I was in a dream. What? How? Your mother was a brilliant botanist, Carol explained. When Emily's husband fell ill with a rare condition, it was your mother who developed the treatment that saved him. But she never wanted recognition. She only cared about helping people. Emily's face had gone pale. That's impossible. I would have known. Would you? Carol asked sharply. Or were you too caught up in your own world to notice the kindness of others? I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. All this time, I'd been enduring Emily's abuse, thinking I had no connection to this world. But my parents had been a part of it all along. Suddenly, Emily lunged for her phone. I need to call Bradley. This can't be true. He needs to come home now. Without thinking, I grabbed Emily's wrist. No! You don't get to control this narrative anymore. Emily's eyes widened in shock at my defiance. How dare you? No, how dare you? I shot back, my voice trembling with anger and newfound strength. You've tormented me for weeks, made me feel worthless and small, but I'm done being your punching bag. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the voice memo app. I have everything recorded, Emily. Every insult, every cruel comment. Do you really want Brad to hear how you've treated his wife and unborn child? Emily's face crumpled. You wouldn't. I don't want to, I said, softening my tone. But I will if I have to. This has to stop, Emily. Not just for me, but for all of us, including you. Carol stepped between us. Ladies, please, this isn't the way to resolve things. Emily, you need to understand the pain you've caused. And Amy, revenge won't heal those wounds. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. You're right, Carol, but what do we do now? Before anyone could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Brad. Hey, sweetheart, surprise. I'm at the airport. Be home in an hour. Can't wait to see you and Mom. The blood drained from my face. Brad was coming home. Now. And he had no idea about the war that had been raging in his absence. Emily and I locked eyes, a moment of understanding passing between us. We had less than an hour to decide how this story would end. Well, Carol said, her voice steady, it seems we have a choice to make. Do we continue this cycle of hurt, or do we find a way to heal? I looked down at my phone, then at Emily's tear-stained face, and finally at my still flat stomach where my child was growing. In that moment, I realized that the next move I made would shape not just my future, but the future of my family for generations to come. With a deep breath, I made my decision. Let's talk. The sound of Brad's key in the lock sent my heart racing. Emily, Carol, and I exchanged panicked glances. We'd spent the last hour in tense discussion, but nothing was resolved. Hello? Anyone home? Brad's cheerful voice echoed through the foyer. Emily straightened her hair, plastering on a smile. In here, darling. Brad appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up when he saw me. Amy, God, I've missed you. He swept me into a hug, then froze, noticing the tension in the room. What's going on? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I possibly explain everything? Emily jumped in. Bradley, dear, we were just having a little chat, nothing to worry about. Brad's eyes narrowed. Mom, what have you done? The accusation in his voice surprised me. Maybe he wasn't as oblivious as I'd thought. I haven't done anything, Emily protested, but her voice wavered. Actually, Emily, Carol interjected gently, I think it's time for honesty. Brad looked between us, confusion etched on his face. Will someone please tell me what's happening? I took a deep breath. It was now or never. Brad, your mother has been unkind to me while you were gone. Unkind? Emily scoffed. Don't be so dramatic, Amy. Something inside me snapped. Dramatic, you've belittled me, insulted my family, worked me to exhaustion despite my pregnancy, and made me feel worthless in my own home. Brad's face darkened. Mom, is this true? Emily's mask crumbled. I was just trying to protect you, Bradley. She's not good enough for you. Not good enough? Carol's voice rang out. Emily, do you even know who Amy is, who her parents were? As Carol revealed the truth about my parents, Brad's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally deep hurt. You knew? He asked his mother. You knew about Amy's parents and still treated her this way? Emily's shoulders sagged. I didn't want to lose you, Bradley. You're all I have left. So you tried to drive away the woman I love, the mother of my child? Brad's voice cracked with emotion. I felt a surge of love for him, mixed with a fierce determination. Brad, there's more. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the recordings. I've documented everything. Emily's eyes widened in panic. Amy, please? For a moment I was tempted. One button, and Emily would face the consequences of her actions. But as I looked at Brad's anguished face, I realized the truth would hurt him as much as it would punish Emily. With a shaky breath, I deleted the recordings. No more secrets, no more manipulation. If we're going to be a family, we need to start fresh. Brad squeezed my hand, gratitude shining in his eyes. Amy's right, Mom, I love you, but this has to stop. You need to accept Amy, or what? Emily whispered. Or you'll lose us both, Brad said firmly. The room fell silent. Emily's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. As I watched Emily break down, I felt my anger begin to dissipate. In its place, a surprising emotion emerged, compassion. This woman, who had tormented me for weeks, was suddenly human, flawed, afraid, and desperately lonely. I knelt beside Emily, taking her hand. We're not leaving you, Emily, but things have to change. Emily nodded, squeezing my hand. I'll do better, I promise. As Brad joined us, wrapping us both in a hug, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, we could build a real family. Carol watched us with tears in her eyes. Your parents would be so proud of you, Amy, she whispered. In that moment, surrounded by the tangled threads of past and present, I realized that this wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Messy, complicated, but full of possibility. The real challenge was just starting. Could we truly heal the wounds of the past and create a future together? As I felt my baby kick for the first time, I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to try. 6 months had passed since that fateful confrontation, and I found myself back in the secret garden, my swollen belly a testament to the new life growing within me. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the tension that had permeated the house for so long. Amy? Emily's voice called out, hesitant and soft, so different from the sharp tones that had once cut me to the core. I turned to see her approaching, a tray of lemonade in her hands. I thought you might be thirsty, she said, offering me a glass. As I took it, our eyes met. The past months hadn't been easy. There had been arguments, tears, and moments when I thought we'd never move past the hurt, but slowly, painfully, we'd begun to rebuild. Thank you, I said, meaning it for more than just the drink. Emily settled beside me on the bench, her eyes roaming over the garden. You've done wonders here, she murmured, just like your mother would have. The mention of my mother no longer brought pain, but a warm glow of pride. Carol had shared so many stories, helping me piece together the legacy I'd inherited. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen. I gasped, the glass slipping from my fingers. Emily's eyes widened in alarm. Amy, is it time? I nodded, unable to speak as another contraction hit. Emily sprang into action, her voice strong and sure as she called for Brad and dialed the hospital. The next few hours passed in a blur of pain and anticipation. Brad held my hand, his face a mix of worry and excitement, and to my surprise, Emily never left my side, her cool hand on my forehead a constant comfort. As dawn broke, a new cry filled the room. Our daughter Lily entered the world with a lusty wail that brought tears to my eyes. She's beautiful, Brad whispered, cradling our tiny daughter. I looked up to see Emily hovering uncertainly at the edge of the bed. Would you like to hold your granddaughter? I asked. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she gently took Lily in her arms. Hello, little one, she cooed. I'm your Grammy, and I promise to love you fiercely and fairly, always. In that moment, watching Emily with Lily, I felt the last of my resentment melt away. We'd all made mistakes, but we'd also found the strength to forgive and grow. As if sensing the shift, Lily opened her eyes, fixing us all with a gaze that seemed wise beyond her minutes. "She has your mother's eyes," Emily said softly, looking at me with a mixture of regret and hope. I reached out, taking Emily's hand. "And she'll grow up knowing all about her grandmother and her great-grandparents and the legacy of love and strength they left behind." Brad joined us on the bed, wrapping his arms around us all. "We're a family," he said firmly. "All of us. And we're going to do this right." As I looked at the faces around me, Brad's steadfast love, Emily's hard-won acceptance, and Lily's infinite potential, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been difficult, filled with thorns and poison ivy, but it had led us here, to this moment of new blooms and fresh starts. Carol arrived later that day, her arms full of blue hydrangeas. "For new beginnings," she said with a wink. As we all gathered around Lily, sharing stories and laughter, I realized that this was more than just a happy ending. It was a new chapter, one filled with the promise of growth, understanding, and unconditional love. I thought of the secret garden, how it had flourished under care and attention, despite the initial neglect. Our family was like that garden now, tended with patience, nurtured with compassion, and blooming with the vibrant colors of reconciliation and hope. Lily gurgled in my arms, her tiny hand wrapping around my finger. In her grasp, I felt the strength of generations, my parents' legacy, Brad's unwavering support, Emily's hard-earned wisdom, and my own resilience. As I looked out the window at the garden beyond, I smiled. Life, like a garden, was full of seasons. We'd weathered the winter of discontent and emerged into a spring of new possibilities, and I knew, with unshakable certainty, that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, our roots intertwined, reaching for the sun.